Okay, so last week we talked briefly about chords. This week we're going to talk a lot more in depth about chords. So before we get started, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions. I'm going to assume you know what a major scale is. I'm going to assume you know what the triads of a natural major scale are as well. So let's look at playing the most simple kind of chords we can play on a bass. Let's look at playing triads. That's going to be root of the chord, third of the chord, and fifth. Let's do it in C. Well, normally I say it's best to learn multiple fingerings, multiple positions for playing things. Here there's only really one position you can do to play this voicing, this closed voicing triad, which is going to be fourth finger here on the root note, second finger up here on the third finger rather up here on the third, and your first finger on the fifth up here. Slight variation you can do with your third finger on the root and your second finger on the third. So that's a closed voicing, which means the notes are as close together as they can be. They're no more than a fourth apart. In this case it's all, because we're in root position, it's all thirds all the way up. So that's in root position. One of the cool things to do is to learn the inversions. So what's an inversion? So we take the notes of our C major triad, so we got C, E and G. If we take those exact same notes and just put them in a different order, so say we take our root note here, C, and just put it on the top of this stack of thirds, now we have this. So it's still a C major chord, it's not some kind of E chord, because we still have all the notes of C major. We've got our C and our E and our G, they're just in a different order. C's just been moved up an octave. But our root note has become this E. And this is what we call first inversion. As you've inverted the chord, you've almost turned it upside down. So the first inversion, the third of the chord is now on the bottom, which in this case is E. So let's look at that. How am I playing that? So that's going to be my third finger over here on this E here. And my first finger, barring a little bit, playing the G and the C up there. And obviously we've got one more inversion. We've got the second inversion, where we do the exact same thing. We take that E from the bottom, flip it up, put it on the top, and now we have this shape. We've got our G, the fifth, on the bottom. And the way I'm playing that one, that's going to be second finger, playing that G there, third finger on the C, and your first finger up there on the E. It's a nice like slidey shape, you can move that around quite easily, which is quite nice. Obviously you can play this slightly differently. You could play this with your third finger on the G, your fourth finger on the C, and your second finger up there on that E, which lets you go back and kind of play this sus4 shape. Sus2 shape this would be if we're in C major, sorry. Which again is nice. It's different fingerings give you different possibility to do little embellishments and pick up different melody notes, which is cool. So that's our C major. Obviously we can also do C minor. And a minor chord, we just take this third, move it down a half step to make it a minor third. So then we've got a minor chord, we've got C minor. This is always just going to be one finger different because we're only changing one note, so there's your minor shape. We come over here to this E flat, which is E's the third, so we can move that down to E flat. Exactly the same shape, we're barring with our first finger on the C and the G, but then our second finger is going to come over here and play the E flat there. Likewise when we go up here, play our second inversion, E flat on the top there. So that's still our first finger, it's just moved over here. Like I say, this shape's very slidey, it's very easy to kind of do that kind of thing. You can use your fourth finger there to kind of go over there and embellish some of these notes. Cool. So those are your major and your minor triads in their inversions. So already this gives us a variety of possibilities. Just this little closed voicing thing. You could play an entire song just with you can play whole songs just with these triads. And I'm changing what inversion I'm playing there just to make it lead nicely from one chord to the next. And you'll find piano players are amazing at this. They don't do this all the time without even thinking about it. But because I could play all these chords just in their root position, but it would sound kind of doofy and kind of just, there's your 1, 5, 6 minor 4, the 4-chord song. It's kind of doofy, whereas you can play with inversions, you can mess around, finding the easiest way to get from one chord to the other. That's a lot of fun, and it makes it sound great. Let's start with practicing this. The first thing to do is to just go up the inversions. So you start on C in root position, C in first inversion, C in second inversion, and back down. And you can go up to the next. Go up and down the inversions. Do them in minor as well. Nice and easy. Just really get those in your head. And what I want you to do is focus on different notes at each time. So what I mean by this is start thinking about what the root of the note you're playing is, of the chord you're playing is. So right here I'm thinking, okay, C, E, G, C. Thinking about what the lowest note I'm playing is and really getting what note you're playing in your head is. And then do that a few times. I'd say like 15, 20 times, as many as you can. And as you feel like you're really starting to get it. And then do the exact same thing again, but really focus on where the root note is in this chord. So, there's my C there. Now think about, where's my C in this shape here? It's right on the top here. So I think I've got my C there, I've got C there, I've got C there on my third finger there. I got C on my third finger on the bottom here. Really think about both what the root note is, as in what inversion you're in, and what the actual chord you're playing is. This isn't an E flat chord, this is a C chord. It just happens to have the E flat on the bass. So really think about that when you're playing these chords, focus on what the actual chord is, as well as after you focus on what the root is. Be really aware of where everything is, what the notes are, and that will really help you come to grips with all this stuff. So once you've practiced going up the inversions, the next thing to do, take this one step further, is practicing over a whole scale. So let's start in C major. Start with our 1 chord, which is C major. Go up to our 2 chord, which is D minor. I'm going to start by doing this all in root position. So C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. And this is where things are going to get a bit fruity. We got our B diminished. And this is just going to be the minor shape, but again you move this first finger, move that down a half step, so you have that shape, and then you come back to C major. Now, positionally, I did that all in 1 octave from here. You're going to have to start in different octaves. Some of these aren't all going to be usable, but it's really good to get them in your head to know what everything is. Even if you have to, say, you're on a 4 string and you start down here. You can practice changing strings as you go up, so maybe you start on this string. And when you get to F, maybe you shift up here and play it there. That. You can practice it, try it in different ways, try it in different positions, see what's working, see what's working for you. And then obviously, once you've gone practice ascending, practice descending. So going up and going back down. That kind of thing. While I think about it, that's another nice thing you can do is when you're in this root position shape. If you bar your finger, as if you were doing that first inversion shape, you get the octave of the root note on the top, and that's a really nice way to finish the song. Gives it a good sense of finality. Because you complete the whole arpeggio with an octave on the top, which is nice. So yeah, do this in all keys. My old bass teacher, Joe Hubbard, would say every exercise you do it 50 times, and you do it in every key 50 times, which is something I still try and do, and it's a lot of work. It takes forever, but you're not going to forget it if you do it 50 times in every key. So aim for that. Aim for that if you can. That's my challenge to you. 50 times, 50 times in each key. Cool, so those are triads. You could take just triads and you can start playing songs, you can start playing tunes, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. And that's just closed position triads. So let's look at open position triads. So open position is really good for us on bass, purely because the lower we go, the muddier things start to sound. Like after a while, you can't really play closed position voicings down there before it's starting to get muddy and not quite all there. Like it's like if you went to the left hand side of a piano. Have you ever done this and just played a random grouping of chords down the end? It doesn't matter what it is, it'll sound muddy and not very great, because we're not really meant to be playing closed voicings down there. But if you go down to the lower octaves and play the left hand side of a piano and play an octave, that's going to sound great, that's going to sound huge. So with that in mind, open voicings. So a closed voicing, the notes of the chord, notes of arpeggio, are as close together as we can possibly get them. So meaning generally there's no interval larger than a fourth. Whereas an open voicing, big intervals as you want. Generally fifths. Fifths is like the minimum you go for. So if I give you a C major, got my first finger there on C, fourth finger up there on G, and then you can see I've skipped out the third on this string. I've gone straight to the fifth there. What I'm doing is taking that third and moving it up an octave. So my third's on top. So instead of root 3 5, I've got root 5, and then the third is on the top there. So technically, the actual interval is larger than a third. Obviously, it's going to be a tenth, right? Yeah, tenth. So an interval of a tenth just means it's a third but an octave higher. So I'm not thinking of it as a tenth, like in the way I would think of something as a 9 or an 11 or a 13. Because it's still serving the function as a third. It's still the major third of the chord, it's just in a different octave. So there you go, there's your third. There it is in root position. So moving on from that, we have our root position, now we have our first inversion, which I'm playing like this here with my third finger on the E, my first finger up there on the C, and my fourth finger on that G there. And obviously you can play this down here. Other cool thing about this position is you can play it this way with the root note up there, with the C up there, but you can also play it, which is a really nice shape for me. You're barring to get the G there, got your E there with your first finger. It's not a full bar because you don't actually have to hit these notes in the middle, and then you have the C there with your fourth finger. And a really cool thing to do here is add the 9. It's tricky to do there. Let me do one. I do it there on that F chord. We've got that G there, so you get this really nice add 9 shape. Which is sounds amazing. Sounds really, really cool, and that's something you do there. But for our own purposes, we're going to omit that 9. And then moving on from there, we have our open voicing. That's our second inversion. There's a root note C up there. There's the E there. There's our G on the bottom there. You can go up here. And here's another shape you can use for playing your root position chords. Where you got your C there with my third finger. First finger up there on the G, and the third up here with my fourth finger. Super nice. So, there's your major ones. Let's have a brief look at the minor ones. That's going to be... So again, you're doing this kind of barring thing, where you've got your first finger taking care of the root note, and the third up there, and then your third finger is going to take care of the fifth. So that's your root position. If we go to our... That's the major position. Just move that third finger down to your second finger. Turn it into an E flat. Now we've got C minor in first inversion. This next one's where things start to get tricky. Because that's your minor shape. This is fine when you're doing stuff up here. That's not much of a stretch at all, but the lower down you go, stretchier that shape gets. But luckily there's an alternative where you, instead of being, this is a second finger on the fifth there, first finger on the third there, and your fourth finger on the C at the top there. But another shape you can do the exact same structure, just different fingering. First finger on the G, fourth finger up there on the E flat on the third, and then third finger up there on the C. There's another shape, and then obviously you can use the exact same alternate fingering for the major one, minor one. Exactly the same. Fourth finger's just down, down a semitone, down one fret to that E flat. Practice them in the exact same way you practice the closed voicings one. So go up your major. And obviously this is going to be a lot more fretboard manoeuvring. There's a lot more to stay in the right position. There's a lot more picking out the notes, which is great. That's going to make you focus on what the notes of the arpeggio, the notes of the chords are, finding your way around that. Practice them in major, minor, and then start by going up the scale as well. Obviously, for this diminished one, I'm not going to tell you how to do this one. You can work most of these out for yourself because it's very simple. It's just taking whatever note the fifth is, which I want you to work out, and then moving it down. I'll give you this one for free. This is your B diminished. Up and down the scale, playing triads in whatever key you're in. That was C to start with. 50 times in each key. If you really want to practice, if you really want to get a handle on it, that's the best way to do it. Yeah, so closed voicing, open triads, closed voicing and open voicing triads. They've got a different feel. I find closed voicing lends itself a lot more to playing around with little embellishments. Like whereas the open voicings tend to give themselves a bigger sense of finality on a bass, particularly if you have like your root 5 and your third up there, that shape. Play the octave up there with a tap. That's we've come home. That's the end. That feels has a real sense of finality to me. I wouldn't stick that in the middle of a piece, but for an ending, these big old chords. Super, super nice. It kind of lends itself well to changing the bass note as well. because there's a larger gap there. You kind of there's more of a disconnect between the bass note and the upper structure to my ear anyway. So it makes doing these descending lines have more impact because they feel like two different voices, two different parts. So. That kind of thing. There were some sevens in there, but we'll get back to that. Yeah, learn them both. Have a play around with both of them. Once you've done the scalar exercises, really good thing to do is just start learning tunes. Like, look up some songs, find some Beatles songs, something with simple pop songs with simple chords, nothing too complicated, and just start playing them in different positions. Like, have fun trying to fit chords together. Cover coming next week probably. You name that tune, well done. But yeah, just experiment playing things in different positions. Try playing a song all in root position, all in first inversion, all in second inversion, and then finding ways to link the chords together so that they sound nice and resolve nicely. Here's a little free one, but going from your first inversion of a 5 chord to a 1 chord in this shape sounds great. Because the voice leading's great there. They're all just moving up. The third's moving up a semitone to get to the root. And this fifth's moving up a tone to get to that third of the C chord. So if you can look to do that kind of shape, that sounds great to me. That's really, really cool. Yeah, have fun with it. That's a lot of fun. Cool, so 7th chords. This video is already getting way too long, so I'm gonna just briefly talk about these. I'm probably gonna come back further on down the line, do another video on chords. We can talk about 9th chords, extensions, all of that crazy stuff. But the thing with triads is enough to be getting started with. Triads is more than enough. That'll keep. I'm still working on triad stuff now. It's a lot you can do with that. But we're going to talk briefly about 7th chords. So what is a 7th chord? You take the notes of the triad, you go up another third, boom, you get a 7th. That's literally all there is to it. So these are actually one of the first chords I ever learned to play on bass. The 7th chords. It was my bass teacher at ACM, Joe Hubbard, who suggested, playing along the jazz numbers by learning the harmony first. These are the shapes that he used, so full credit to him. I just stole his ideas. So these are the shapes that I like to use, and you'll notice all of these shapes are emitting the 5th. So the 5th doesn't actually really tell you anything about the chord. So the root note tells you what the root of the chord is. That's obviously important. The 3rd is going to give you whether the chord's minor or major, so that's very important. But the 5th is kind of just a very stable, interval, but it doesn't tell you anything about the quality of the chord. That's why power chords exist. Power chords just make the chord bigger without actually telling you, is this, a major chord or a minor chord. It's just, you can just slam on that forever. But because the chord, it doesn't tell you anything about the chord, a lot of the time you can just omit the 5th without actually losing anything. So, for example, here's our C minor 7. Here's a C minor 7 with the 5th. That's a lot harder to play. And that 5th isn't actually adding much. It's not telling us anything new about the chord. It's not like adding something like the 9. This is a great shape. I love this chord, by the way. This is root 3, flat 7, 9. The 9's adding way more colour and intrigue than the 5th is. So the generally, rule of thumb on bass, denser a chord's getting, as in the more notes you're adding, just get rid of the fifth. You don't need it. Don't need it. I just like that one. That's a cool one. Yeah, so you don't need the fifth. So just get rid of it. It's going to make going between these dense lines a lot easier. So, what was I actually playing there? So, this is C minor 7. This is first finger playing the root note. Second finger is playing the flat 7 there. Third finger playing the flat 3 there. And the great thing about these particular shapes is you can add stuff to them really, really easily. So, like, if I just move my... if I stop playing the third there and play it there, now I can get the 9 in there, like I showed you earlier. I can... let's see... and get a 4 and get an 11 in there. Which is really, yeah, that's really cool. I haven't practiced this. Cool stuff like that, you know. I need to practice going from that fingering to that fingering because that's quite tricky. Yeah, love these shapes. These are awesome. So, there's a minor one. Let's do C major. C major 7. There it is. So literally, all I've done is the chords I'm playing with my second and third finger. Just move them up there. Move them up by. Move them up 1 fret, 1 semitone each. We've got on major 7 and on major 3rd. For whatever reason, I like playing these with my 3rd and 4th finger. This, I can play it like that. With your 3rd and 4th finger, I prefer playing it like this with my 2nd and 3rd. But this one, I prefer playing like that. 3rd and 4th finger. Not sure why. That's what works for me. There's your major. But when we get to 7s, we also encounter other most useful chord type. We have minor chords, major chords, dominant chords. So this is where you have a major chord, root 3 5, but instead of having a major 7, as you would see there, you have minor 7. This occurs naturally in a major scale. This is the 5 chord is naturally a dominant chord. Let's say major chord, but with a flat 7. Play the flat 7. With a flat 7. So you have this dominant 7. And the dominant chord, oh, it wants to resolve. Wants to resolve real bad. Listen to that. I just wanna... there it is. That's you know, that's a classic. You see that all over jazz. Jazz is just 2-5-1s at the end of the day. No matter how complicated, no matter how dense the harmony is, at the end of the day, it's probably just, you know, all music, in fact, is kind of just 2-5-1s, just substituting 2 chords for 4 chords, etc. Anyway, doesn't matter. Getting ahead of myself. The point is, dominant chords. So this is the shape I'm doing. It's just my major shape, but, or the minor shape, in fact. It's just the minor shape, but that 3rd finger's on that minor 3rd there is up there to make it major 3rd. Now it's a major chord with a flat 7. So these are these positions here. Yeah, minor, major, dominant. When you get up to here on this string here, or you 4-string guys up on this shape with the G here. Because obviously if you haven't got the high C, you can't use these shapes. Up here you can't play this exact C minor, you'd have to play it. Not quite as cool. But you can play this shape. So this is your major 7. This is root on your on your 2nd finger, the major 3rd on your 1st finger, and the major 7 up here on your 3rd finger. The minor one, I think we said before, is just this. Root, flat 3. Where have we had that before? And then your dominant shape is the exact same thing, just instead of a minor 3rd, a major 3rd. And a dominant chord you can play with your third finger on the root and your fourth finger on the flat 7 like I'm doing there, but generally I like playing it with my first finger on the root, second finger up there on the third, and my third finger on the flat 7. All these shapes, they're all omitting the roots. We don't need it. That's fine. And these are great to play together. They lead into each other really well. The voice leading's great on them. So. All of that stuff. You can loop that, play over that for ages. That's great. Oh, I have neglected to mention the other chord we need, which is the minor 7 flat 5. We're just going to talk about briefly. So, generally, on a 4-string, you're only going to use this position because this is the one chord where the 5th is actually more important than the 3rd. Hearing that flat 5 and the flat 7 is going to immediately tell you, oh, this is a minor 7 flat 5, rather than having to hear, you know, you're not hearing that a diminished 7th, you're just going to hear immediately spike out as a fully diminished chord, but this is instead your half diminished chord. If you're on a 6-string, you can still have that 3rd in there. What I like to do is play the minor 7 shape and then with my 4th finger come across and hit that 5. So you have your minor 2-5-1. If you haven't got 6-string, or you don't want to play that particular shape, then just first finger on the root, third finger on the flat 5, and your second finger up there on the minor 7. Yeah, one of those rare instances where the 5th is actually telling you more about the chord than the 3rd is. It's still great to have that minor 3rd in there, really get the full, you know, half diminished minor 7 flat 5 sound, but the 5th is more important to that sound than the 3rd is. So if you need to compromise, just playing it like that. Stephen Wilson chord right there. And then yeah, you can start using these seventh chords to start playing over jazz stuff. Again, you can play them on anything. Learn songs with more out there harmony. But yeah, those are great. Those are really, really cool. I use these all the time in my own stuff. I think since really working on this stuff, I still use triads more than any other chord type. I mean, if you look at my version of Africa, that's just, if I play it in the right key. That's all triads, all the way. Whole thing, all triads, just in different inversions, going down. Occasionally I throw in this little sus shape. That's purely because the bass line does this ascending thing throughout the whole song. But let's briefly talk about sus chords while we're here. Let's get a whole lot. A sus chord is just a chord that doesn't have a 3rd. It either has a 2nd or a 4th. They're called, sus stands for suspended, purely because we're lacking a 3rd. We don't get a clear sense of whether this is major or minor. That's a sus 2, that's a sus 4. It could be this D major. Or it could also be minor. That's sus 4, sus 2, sus 4. They're suspended. They could be either minor or major. You don't. It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. You don't know until you actually play a 3rd. Till you actually know. But the shape there, very similar to other shapes we've done because we're just changing one note again. So there's your, in this case, that is G major in second inversion. Go from but I'm using my third finger, my fourth finger, my second finger up here in that shape. So I can take off my second finger, play the first finger there on that second. I'm calling it second and not 9 because it's a sus chord. You could call it a sus 9, I guess, but we don't. We call it a sus 2. I don't know why. Probably a very good reason for it that someone will explain to me in the comments, but either way, that's the shape for your sus chord, sus 2 chord. If you wanted sus 4 in that shape, that's my third finger, second finger, third finger, and then my fourth chord. Fourth finger playing the fourth. Thank you, words. The other way of doing that is this shape here, with the first finger barring across there, and my fourth finger back there on the root note. You'll notice these chords are actually inversions of each other. A sus 2 chord and a sus 4 chord are actually just the same thing in a different inversion. We're not going to go into that right now, but yeah, that's the fingering you would use for that if you ever, you want to play some Bryan Adams. I don't know how the rest of it goes, but that kind of thing. Yeah, so we've got our triads in closed positions, our root first inversion, second inversion. We have our triads in open positions in our root first inversion, second inversion. That's enough to be getting on with, but then we also had a brief look at major 7s, minor 7s, dominant 7s, in which we omit the root. And then a little bit of sus chords. Obviously, this is just scratching the surface. This is just a first step into the world of bass chords and harmony in general, but this is a great building block. This is the most important stuff, to get triads down, to start playing tunes, to start experimenting and start having fun with it. Practice through, as we suggested, have a lot of fun. Chords are awesome. Enjoy. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe. If you want to see more stuff, more tutorials, you want to see more bass covers, subscribe, hit the little bell thing. It might do something, who knows, no one's actually quite sure. If you have a specific thing you want me to cover in lessons, leave a comment, tell me down below. If there's a particular song you want me to cover, I don't do requests, but I might think it's a good idea, and I might steal it and do it anyway. Yeah, thank you so much. See you next week for more bass covers.